once again, we are not registered investment advisors. Everything should be taken today strictly as educational, not a solicitation for any investments. Okay, so now that everybody can see, today's lesson is going to include scanning with options. You know, we try our best to listen to the feedback that everybody gives on the webinars, and the overwhelming majority last time would like to be exposed to more options type strategies, or looking at the limited option metrics that we have, which right now we've got a nice assortment of them. Of course, hopefully we might be able to add some more in the future. But what we're going to do today is go over some of the scanning options with options, no pun intended, and then cover the multi-strategy window and how we can use that to enhance our trading during the day as well. All right, so let us begin here. So what we're going to do first is simply access the options channel, because we can get very specific, but a lot of the times what's happening with users is in our development process, we try to make it as simple as possible. So what I just did there is I clicked on the options channel, and then we get the options layout, or the options channel, to present itself. And, you know, here we are presented with, not including the charts, 6 different windows. Okay, so if we were an options trader, typically, you know, whereas when we're dealing with stocks, there are a lot of metrics to deal with. When we're dealing with the options filters, we have basically, one second here, and I will show everybody the options filters that we do have currently. So while it's not a huge universe at present, these are some of the key factors, you know, put and call volumes, how many puts versus calls are being traded, what is the options volume, and that can be, you know, divvied up into simply how many options contracts have traded, puts and calls, or you just might want to see put volume, call volume, or how many options above normal, including puts and calls, is a stock trading. So having said that, we'll just click back over here, and what we'll do is we'll just take a look at these 2 windows right here. And by the way, you can see that all of these windows here with the T, these are all top list windows with the exception of this guy right here. So what I will do here is expand the highest call and highest put windows today. Well, actually, let's do combined. So let's see, usual options volume today, and highest options volume today. So we're going to use these 2 as the example. Get these expanded just a little bit. So you may notice the title here. We have unusual. Hey Scott, I think you might be. Is that you typing?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries, if you could just mute that real quick. Thank you. Okay, so what we have here today are 2 different windows. Highest options volume, but then we also have unusual options volume. So what is necessarily the difference between these 2 windows? And let me just make these a little bit bigger here, and we'll expand the symbol list down a little bit. So at first glance, these might seem very similar. If we look at the list of symbols that's being reported here, you know, these are the usual suspects that I typically see when we're looking at high options volume. Typically, you know, the repeat offenders, the stocks that are very, you know, high volume oriented with lots of active options traders. So let me expand this out to where we can see these symbols as well. So we've got unusual options volumes today as a percentage here. Let's see. We got the contracts here. We got the, okay. So here we can see that this list is being default sorted by the options volume today. Yes, it's high options volume, but it's looking strictly at contracts. Okay. So 3.8 million contracts traded today on the SPYs, 1.4 million contracts on the IWM, so forth and so on Apple. Now, that's not necessarily, you know, it's like saying a stock that has high volume, right? Stock usually does 500,000 shares a day, 1,000,000 shares a day. It's basically comparing the options contracts here, which might be good, and that might be what you're looking for. But what about unusual options volume today? How does that differ from, the number of contracts that have traded today? So if we look over here at this list, it's being default sorted by options volume today on a percentage basis. In other words, how many options above normal are trading here? And of course, since we're dealing with percentage volumes, then a value of 100 would be normal. So we can see, leading the list over here, yeah, the SPY did a lot of options contracts, but it does every day, right? So if we look over here and we see, this, biopharma firm, EPRS, 51,000, that's quite a multiple on the number of options that are going on today. So, we can kind of get a little bit different flavor here for, this would be kind of the equivalent of maybe a relative volume on a stock, right? What at this time of the day, for relative volume, it's telling you how many multiples of normal volume a stock is on path to do, one being normal. So we can see right here, relative volume for EPRS for the equity itself was just about normal, but with extremely high options contracts going on here. And if we were to pull up a chart of EPRS today, we can see, of course, there was a lot of this pattern today just due to the nature of the market. But not all of these patterns that are like this one right here that's being exhibited had this type of options contracts being, being done on it. So, in the morning, if I was keeping my eyes on EPRS close to the open and I saw the downdraft in the market, well, that's going to help me with my decision making right off the bat. But then depending on how far above normal the options contract would help me reinforce my decision. And of course, we're looking at total volume here for contracts, and we're also looking at a percentage above normal for those contracts. But we still haven't even really, delved into, well, okay, on EPRS, what was more active? The puts or the calls? And that can always be a good indicator. If a stock's bottoming out, getting close to those lower resistance level, or lower support levels on a longer term chart. Maybe it's coinciding with the downdraft in the range that we're in the current market, maybe on the SPY. Maybe it's coinciding with that. Maybe it is not. But typically, when that stock starts to capitulate either to the up or the downside, say it's bouncing off the support levels, if we're starting to see a lot of put activity versus call, if we can resort immediately by this filter here, which is a put-call ratio. So when we start seeing a lot more puts done than calls, a lot of the times that can be a bottoming signal. Not all the time, because there's always somebody, if the put activity is extremely high, well, there's always another side to that trade. But on, there's sellers of the puts and there's buyers of the puts. But obviously, if there weren't enough buyers to kind of offset the sellers, we'd see another adjustment down. So sometimes that can be a good turning indicator. Now, this is the simplified view. As I said earlier, at first, the first time I pull up, I'll just re-click on this options channel to show it to you once again in its native format. Now, at first glance, this might seem a little confusing, but it's just like any of these other layouts. It takes a little time to absorb all of the windows here and what's going on. So, highest options volume percentage-wise, we've got highest. If you just want to focus on the highest put volumes, well, you can focus on these windows. These are the stocks doing excessive put volume. If we want to focus on excessive call volume, we can easily implement these two windows. So, reverting back to the theory that not only do we have some of the most advanced technology out there for scanning the markets, but, with that type of advancement comes a certain level of complexity. So with these channels, I urge everybody to explore them, because what we're trying to do is use the powerful metrics, but put it into a format that's a little bit simpler, especially when you're trying to get over the learning curve. So each of these windows is doing separate things for the options related volume. Now, sometimes you might not want to see all of these windows. Maybe you just like to have a broader view. And if that's the case, there are always options. So let me just load a window from my cloud here. And this is yet another way to view the options radar, or the options data. Those of you who might remember a few webinars back, we showcased a volume radar. And this is basically just another version of that, but instead of focusing on the volume, which we can still leave in here, which makes for some very good comparisons, but we simply added the options filters as columns here. And also, too, just to regress here a little bit, of course, what's going to be on your list is going to be indicative of your filter settings. So right here, pretty broad filter settings, just trying to keep the thinly traded stuff out. But if you want to see more of a broad view, we can do it like this. So I've got all the options filters down here. So whichever it is that you're interested in, put volume, call volume, number of options traded, so forth and so on. We can mix these with some other metrics that we might find interesting. So if we sorted this list by relative volume, which is looking at just the volume on the equity of the stock, we're probably going to notice some correlations with the volume that the stock might be doing. And let's go back and, we're getting a lot of weird values here because it's looking at the close. So before we get into detail here, let me just come back and look at this when the market was open. So we'll just go back to about 2 hours before the close of the U.S. markets, which would be here in California, 11 a.m. Okay, so now we're seeing what this list looked like today between 11:05 Pacific time, which would be 2 to 2:05 Eastern time. Now, let's just start with relative volume. Interesting enough, CXRX was the relative volume leader at this time. However, look what we're getting here. That's just a pretty good indicator. No options available on that equity. If you see zero, it might just be nobody traded today, or there might be a good chance that options aren't even available on that one. So if you look at the rest of these high volume stocks, well, typically if the stock is doing high volume on the equity side, there's a pretty good indicator that the options volume can be high. Not always the case, as we saw in that one stock that we saw earlier where the relative volume was 1, but yet the options volume was just off the charts. So sometimes there are correlations, sometimes there are not. But getting back to the options information here. Now we're probably going to see some stocks on this list that we didn't see on these lists. And once again, that's going to be predicated on the filter set, and then which direction we decide to sort, by which filter we have an interest in. So, obviously TMH, Endo Pharmaceuticals, trading 10 times the amount of options that they normally do. And then we can quickly just look here and go, okay, where was all the options volume focused today? And we can see in Endo Pharmaceuticals, 10,000, almost 10,300 puts, we could say, versus only 16, almost 1,700 call contracts. Now, if we pull up ENDP on a chart, this is the daily, which is no surprise because a lot of the stocks that we see today exhibited the pattern, got pulled down in the downdraft. But if we look at the longer term chart, it's exactly what, the scenario I was describing earlier. Of course, you never know in the markets. If we look back over this daily chart here, hey, there's always a chance if we have more selling tomorrow, just eyeballing this chart, there might be a little more downside there. But I can tell you this, ENDP is definitely going to be on my watch list for the open tomorrow. because if we get down here and we start to see, stock doesn't really want to go down that much anymore, it might be a really good opportunity, and not only for an intraday trade, but a swing trade as well, depending on how things play out. All right, so then let's take another simple example here. Let's just go, okay, let's resort by call volume. So here we have Gilead Sciences. Did a little bit above average as far as overall go today, but it was the leader as far as the call options go. 52,000 on the call side, 30,000 on the put side, but not really that much of a difference. It did do a lot of volume on the relative volume side. So sometimes we'll see big disparities here. These are always a lot more interesting than seeing the ones that are almost equal call versus put option or option activity. But when you start to see the ones that are way out of balance here, from my experience, those are the ones that can be the more dynamic trades. All right, so let's just do one more comparison here between relative volume, and let's see if there were some correlations between relative volume and the amount of options traded that day. So here's one. We got, of course, these two guys were in play big time. Let's just exclude those for a minute and see if we can find something else interesting here. Okay, there's Indo. We've already covered that one. Pharmaceuticals again. And, hey, obviously there's a theme here. The pharmaceuticals have been in play yesterday and today, and it seems like that's continuing today. So it's not just coincidence that we're seeing, all the big multiples on the options volume. Guess what? They're all the pharmaceuticals. That sector right now is having a tough time. Could be dragging the whole market down, maybe, maybe not. But it's definitely the sector, the soup du jour right now as far as the sectors go. Which brings up another very interesting way that we can help you identify which sectors are going to be in play. We might not have time for it today, but it's using the compare count windows, which I know probably go underutilized by a lot of users. So if we don't have time for that today, it would certainly make for an interesting next webinar. Okay, so unfortunately at this point in time, we're limited by these filters here, but it's all the basics, and we hope to add more in the future. And of course, if there's any other options, metrics that are out there that you guys have an interest in, by all means, send us a recommendation. All right, so what we're going to do real quick here is kind of gravitate over to the multi-strategy window. And once again, I'm just going to restart the options channel. And to point out, all of these are top list, with the exception of this guy right here. Moving higher and lower with unusually high options volume. This is a multi-strategy window indicated by the M here. So if we right-click and hover over the Strategies tab, you can see that I only have two strategies in here. Moving higher with unusually strong options volume and moving lower. So these are both their own independent strategy windows, but what we can do is we can use a multi-strategy window to monitor both of those strategies. So if I go into configure for the moving higher, here's the configuration string. Of course, filters are important. So, when you come in to use a strategy or a multi-strategy window such as this, it's always a good idea to kind of peruse the minimum maximum pricing, see if there's any volume requirements. But since this is options related, it's pretty bare bones. But the nice thing about a multi-strategy window is we can watch one window to monitor both of these strategies. And of course, when the strategy generates a symbol, the strategy name is always going to be displayed here. So if we take a look at the history here, we can see which strategy issued the play. Obviously, this window was not very active today. So this is a simple example with only 2 strategies in it. But if we go to one of the other channels, like the surge channel, once again we have alert windows here, top list here, and we've got a multi-strategy window in place. So it's going to look a little bit different. Whereas the options strategies were limited to 2, this one's got quite a few in here. I mean, we're watching 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different strategies all through this one window here. If we take a look at the history on this one, probably going to be a little bit different. Whereas this one is very active. You can see here how frequently you're being fed alerts. Of course, we're also going to notice that a lot of these are being repeated. And typically that's when the new high or new low is being used as the alert. You're going to get these repeats because every new penny could be a new high. Now, we do have mechanisms in place to prevent symbol repetition. We can easily pop over to the view mode, like so. And if you ever have an alert window that is spitting out too many duplicates, we can always throttle that by just checking this little box here and saying don't repeat for 1 minute, 5 minutes, a day, don't ever repeat. So you do have a little bit of control over the repeats there. So in essence, the multi-strategy window was designed originally to help people maximize their screen space, because obviously as traders, no matter how much screen space we have, it seems like it's never enough. Now, let me do this real quick here. I will spawn a new compare count window, because when we have a blank multi-strategy window, there we go. When we have a blank compare count window here, such as this one, there are no strategies inside of it. Only the ability to import a new strategy, or I could configure one from scratch, just like we're in an alert window. But that's time consuming. If I already have a couple of windows that I want to move in here, it's very simple. So if I wanted to move this window into the multi-strat, simply right click, select collaborate. This is the line of code for that strategy window. So all we have to do is click copy all. Right click in here and say new strategy, collaborate, and paste. And it's literally as simple as that. Now we can look in here and we can see that strategy. So you would just repeat that collaboration process for as many strategies as you would like to move in there. Now, as it goes with most things, that was the original design of the multi-strategy window. Hey, I got 5 slow-moving windows. I'm tired of them taking up screen space. I'd like to consolidate them. Easy enough. However, we can constantly invent new ways to use different windows. Not necessarily the thing that they were originally designed for. So, if I come over to my cloud and pull up what we call a watcher. Of course, this one's looking at the SPY, but we can make it watch whatever we would like to. Whatever single symbol, whether it's an indice or a stock. So in this window, the reason I designed this initially was because if we take a look at the SPY on an intraday chart, of course, for those of you using our charts already, this gray area here is post and pre-market, which I have checked off, right here. Actually, I'm just showing pre-market. So the gray area is the pre-market, and then here's the first tick of the open on a 5-minute candle. So we put in a top here, and then we put in a bottom, and then we were range bound. And then when we're in this area, you, me, and everybody else is wondering, okay, are we going to, stay range bound, or are we going to try to go lower? Well, we can see as it broke the low from here, more than likely today with some volume, we got to follow through to the downside. But as we're in this little consolidation period here, we might be in this bar here, or the the 11:15 Eastern bar, and you're wondering to yourself, when we go down here and test this level, what's going to happen? Are we going to continue lower, or are we just going to print a new low and pop right back up into the range? So if you were watching a window like this, during this time, you might have gotten an edge over the rest of the crowd on whether or not we were going to punch through and continue, or just punch through and pop right back up into the range. And the way that I do that, you know, at these crucial times, let's see here, that is the 11:25 Eastern bar, but this is on local time for me too, so 8:25. So if we take a look at the history here, all right, well, I'm waiting for my history to populate. Bear with me. All right, well, bear with me, everyone, for just 1 second. Perhaps I had an improper setting there. Okay, I think this should show. Okay, well, the only thing I can think of is that since I'm on the developer's version, I'm having a little snafu with my history. So the point that I was going to try to make, instead of trying to bring up another version and waste our valuable time here, the point I was going to make is that if you were watching this window, which, by the way, it's only looking at the SPY, and one strategy has all the bearish alerts, one strategy has all the bullish alerts. So if you're watching this window at these crucial times and you see all of these events transpiring, and we're monitoring the volume in whatever time frame is suitable to you, I like the 1 minute version, but the 5 minute version, 10-minute version, you know, whatever your preference is. If I see these events transpiring and the 1 minute or the 5 minute volume levels are above 200 and 300 as that level is being approached or penetrated, that's always a real good indicator, and especially if we see them crop up to 400 and 500, that we're going to follow through. Now, if the metrics were just popping up barely above twice normal and then regressing back down to below 200 or back to normal, which would be 100, well then that's always a pretty good indicator that we're going to pop back into the range. Okay, so I apologize for the history not working at this point in time, but what we can do here, let me try this one time, and if it doesn't work, we will move on. I'll just use my regular version. Okay, let's see if we get any cooperation here. Well,
Did you remember to select time frame there?
yeah, I just tried the bulk display and then the excuse me, that could be it. Yeah, but for some reason it's just displaying this one, Scott. I don't know. Oh, bingo. Okay. Well, in any case, more than likely this is my developer version causing this. So I would have liked to show you a little bit more detailed data, but you know, the underlying theme remains the same. We can use that multi-strategy window to monitor multiple strategies, or if we really want to keep our fingers on the pulse of a single symbol, we can do that as well. All right, so at this point, Scott, I think it's probably a pretty good time to do some, take some questions now. All right, well maybe Scott.
Before we, well, no, I was just on mute.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, well, we can get to the questions in just a moment. Before we do that, though, I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the handouts. We do have a handout available that has a product code that would enable you to save 25% off the odds maker if you don't have the license yet, 50% off your first month, or 25% off your first year. And for those of you who really understand the value of trade ideas, follow that link, the bit.ly/save900 link, to a package. It's a combination where you can get a full year, the lifetime odds maker license, and an optimized strategy, all for only $10.88, and that immediately saves over $900. If you're currently on the monthly subscription and would like to switch, just go ahead and pick up that $10.88 package and then send us an email to info@tradeIdeas letting us know that you did that, so we can just make sure that everything on your account's going to function correctly. And again, use that code Office28 anytime before now and Friday, all caps, and that'll help you save some money on the odds maker and get ready for the AI channel, which we'll be launching soon.
Hey, Scott, and real quick here before you proceed, I would like to give everybody a glimpse of the conduit that the AI channel is going to be using real quick here.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you go ahead and do that, and then we'll swing into answering some questions. In the meantime, anyone that's got questions, go ahead and type those into the questions panel, and we'll try and get to all of them before the end of the presentation.
Right. So, as Scott was saying about the AI channel, it's been something that's been coming down the pipeline for quite some time. We'd hoped to have it out already, but a couple little snags. But it's coming up relatively soon, and the nice thing about the AI channel, let's see if I can get one up here. All right. And of course, mine is reset, so we can't see the last symbols that were issued. But which is, unfortunate, because I would have liked to have shown you guys the symbols. But every symbol that was in here, every signal that was generated in the last couple of hours today, ended up doing very well. Of course, it was all the short activity today. But as we were saying earlier in a conversation before the webinar started, man, for not having to think about a trade and just react on it, this is really going to be a thing that is specifically made for that purpose, because we're going basically on statistical probability, which we know we're still going to have our losers. But if I'm a trader, I'd much rather be taking trades from a pool where 65 to 70% of the trades win, or just anything above 60, or even 55 with a nice spread between winner and loser. All right. So this is what some of the first iterations of the AI channel are going to look like. These strategies will be contained in here. You'll be able to see the winning percentages and some other metrics here. This is the performance, obviously for these individual strategies, green being winning days, reds being losing days, and the intensity of the green or the red is, how much, is in proportion with how bad the losing day was or how good the winning day was. So, the special that we're running right now, the 1088, which gives you odds maker access and a full year of trade ideas, is a really good deal. I mean, you're basically getting the odds maker for pennies compared to the the normal retail price of $1,100. And once the AI channel launches, then the 1088 special goes away. So we're trying to do that right now for people that as of yet are not odds maker subscribers. Allow them to get it at a very significant discount before the AI channel goes online, because you will have to be an odds maker subscriber to have access to the AI channel. And Scott, didn't we also decide that that's going to also include the red bar ignored, green bar ignored strategies as well?
Yeah. You have to have the odds maker to access the RBI and GBI tools that are going to be released soon. So it's also a requirement.
And, we'll have all those windows plus the AI channel. So for those of you who are on the fence about getting the odds maker, try to make a decision before the AI channel launches, because everybody likes to save money.
Right, and you can use that Office 28 code on your handout to save 25% off the odds maker today. Use it anytime before Friday. But that 1088 package is the best combination we have.
Absolutely.
So let's answer some questions here. If we can move on to that, just make sure you download that handout before the end of the session today. Maybe you could show Leon some good ways to use the compare count window beyond the basic windows that are on the channels.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways that we can work those compare count windows. by, well, I won't say by original design, but for example, we can make a compare account window, keep tabs on two different alert windows. So here's a real simple example right here. Every time a tick comes through this ticker or this ticker, which these are inverses of one another, one's looking at daily highs as the alert, the other one is looking at daily lows with the exact same filter set. So using that same collaboration functionality that I use to transfer a strategy into a compare count window, use that same collaboration to transfer strategies into a compare count window. So transfer turbo brakes down into the red side, turbo brakes up into the green side. Now we can go in here and access these just like they're their own independent freestanding windows. So we can modify our filter or alerts. Every time a symbol comes through one of these windows, this guy's going to keep count for me. So, based on the assumption, and some of you may have heard this in the past, but these windows right here are more or less glorified high-low tickers that are looking for stocks hitting highs and lows with some basic filtering where there's really accelerated 1 minute volume. And for those of you who watch these windows on a regular basis, you know that while not every stock that comes through each one of these is being institutionally sold or institutionally purchased that day, but the majority of them are. So I use this window to start my trading day every day because I typically sit out the first 30 minutes. Once that 30-minute period is done, the opening 30-minute period, I can get a real good feel for my universe of stocks and is there a selling or a buying bias. So after the first 30 minutes, we might notice, okay, 60% red versus 40% green. So we know that in my little universe of stocks, there's already a selling bias. Now that might be going with the market or it might be going counter the market. You never know until the day opens. And then, if we saw 60-40 red in the first 30 minutes, we could always duplicate this window and then track the second 30-minute period with a fresh window. So we might see 60-40 red in the first 30-minute period, and then when we duplicate this window, this one starts a fresh count, this guy keeps his original count. So in the second 30-minute period, I might notice 65 red, 35 green, which tells me that yes, in my universe, there's a selling bias, and not only is there a selling bias, it's accelerating. Now, one more little way we can use these compare count windows is to monitor sectors. So I just open up a different layout and you can see that I've got a wide variety of compare count windows, and if you notice the titles up here, telecommunications, oil and gas extraction, construction, each one of these is pointed to a different sector. But I'm leaving the accelerated buying and selling configuration in place here. But each one of these guys is looking at a different sector. So, invaluable. After whatever time it is you decide to allocate, maybe it's the first 10 minutes, maybe it's the first 15 or 30 minutes, but whatever that magic time for you is, all you have to do is look at this screen. And by the way, my television is my third monitor, pretty big screen, so I have all of these compare count windows monitoring the sectors on that one. So it's really easy for me to go 15 minutes in, I can see which sectors have accelerated buying or selling. Now, on any given day, most of them are going to be showing for accelerated selling 55-45, one way or the other, which is kind of like nothing. It's not a real powerful metric. But then you'll see a few of the sectors, maybe oil and gas, having 70% accelerated buying, or pharmaceuticals 75% accelerated selling. So using these compare count windows in this fashion can really help you identify where the action is going to be in the market based on the sectors that are having the accelerated buying and selling. A lot of the times, depending on the sector that's showing all the accelerated buying and selling, then I'll notice a correlation between the stocks that are coming through my turbo brakes up and down windows. Then I'll notice another correlation between the stocks that are, the sector window, the stocks coming through here, and then my volume radar that I like to use. And when you see all of the stocks lining up in 3 different windows, and then the chart pattern looks good, I mean, it makes for a real easy decision, assuming the risk is in place. So, Leon, I hope that gave you a couple of good ideas on how to use the compare counts.
Then Carl's asking if you have access to any of the ORBs from the AI channel today. So can you show them some of them which would have looked good? That's if you have that.
Well, the server blanked out all my results here. Now, if I did spawn say just a 5-minute red bar ignored, I don't know if it's going to populate right now or if it blanks everything out at the close.
Maybe, and Barry is pointing out that NDRM looked like a really good one, triggered at 2012.
Is that Nancy? What was the symbol?
Nancy, Dennis, Robert, Mary.
Alrighty. So 5 minutes. So what we're looking at here. And then what was the time again?
Well, he said 2012 was the trigger. What's that mean?
2012.
$20.
Price.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, right about in this area here. So typically, as I said earlier, we would be seeing, the populated list here, but I've reset my software. By all means, if Barry wants to pop me over a screenshot, I could throw it up here real quick. Or either way's fine with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you have. He's not mic'd up, so I have to wait for him to reply.
Okay, not a problem. Unfortunately, the results have been, blanked out since I restarted my software. But
yeah, he says NDRM was in the AI channel. Maybe next time we'll get a better demo of the AI.
Right, and whoever asked that question, by all means, they could pop me an email tomorrow, and I could send them a screenshot when the software's up and running. No problem.
Yeah, you can just send it to info@tradeIdeas.com, and he'll shoot you.
Just to give you an idea of the flavor of the things that are being presented. No problem.
So there's a question from Brad. So sometimes there are various tickers that may not display the associated data in their top list and or multi-strategies, even though they do show up in the filtered list. Why is that?
Right now, would these happen to be maybe they're Canadian stocks, right? So the Canadian exchange is a little bit different. Of course, I don't know if he's referring to Canadians or it could be Canadian stocks because they're a little bit more picky about the data that they let us put out to everybody. So if you're seeing that on a Canadian stock, it's just the limitation of the data that they'll let us rebroadcast. Now, if it's a U.S. exchange stock, it really just depends. Is it coming from the small cap? Is it a bulletin board or a pink sheet, or is it on the big exchanges? Some of the stocks aren't optionable. So on the options filters, you won't see any data. Now, was there a specific example, per se?
I don't think so. I didn't see a specific example offered. Then kind of moving on, how much are extra training classes in addition to the hour power?
Well, learning this product is very similar to learning to play a musical instrument that you've never played before. So to think that you would have one session and then you'd be all good to go, a little unrealistic. So that's why we constantly offer ongoing education. So, if you're a subscriber, you've had your first training session, but you still feel like you need a little bit more. Maybe it's about putting a alert and filter combination together. You've been having problems with it, but whatever the topic of discussion or help is, by all means, you can. We're not currently charging for second training sessions, so I'm always happy to help out in whatever capacity I can. Just reach out to me, make contact via email or the online forums, and we can always set you up for a second training session, no problem.
Cool. Thanks, Jamie. So because we mentioned them, we've got some questions about what the RBI, GBI tools are that are coming out.
What are they?
Yeah, if you could maybe run by what they do, why some people are looking forward to them, that kind of thing.
Right. Red bar ignored, green bar ignored is what RBI and GBI stand for. Now, this is actually, I'm a little ill-prepared to discuss, the red bar ignored and green bar ignored because it's not really my cup of tea. I think Barry is probably, he's been the guy that's been pioneering and getting the technology up and running, and it's really a strategy that he likes to use each and every day. I myself have been, looking forward to checking it out and seeing if I can incorporate it into my types of plays. But I'm sure we can get some pretty generic information about RBI and GBI because they've been around for a very long time. And it's basically just ignoring a red or a green bar. Now, I don't know if Barry's listening right now, but is this the time right here where that one identified? Do we know? At that'd be 12:35 Eastern.
Barry says close.
So was this it was a GBI green bar ignored right here. Now, what direction is that stock going to go after we have that indicator? If it's kind of like an NR7, once you see the pattern, it's indicative of a move, but we don't know whether it's going to be up or down. So, not really too sure about that one at this point.
Probably a good chance to plug the trading room, which is
yes, it would, because
there's a link to that located on forums.tradeideas.com. You can just follow that link and join that any day of the week during trading hours for free. And Barry's in there, and he can probably demonstrate that for you if he's sharing a screen at the moment when you're in the room. So again, that's forums.tradeideas.com. We got a question about what the AI channel is. Well, Fareed, that's an optimized strategy channel that's going to be released soon to Trade Ideas subscribers who have the odds maker. What you're looking at on your screen there that Jamie's showing is what the first iteration of the interface will look like. And these are strategies that are constantly being optimized on our servers by our AI or our artificial intelligence. If you can
right,
kind of point out the features there.
Right, to kind of chime in about that, I mean, for those of you who have the odds maker, you will understand immediately what I'm talking about. For those of you who do not, when we optimize or when we scan for a specific event, and we might come back with 3,000 trades over a 30-day period. And then the goal is to improve that strategy and reduce the number of trades while at the same time increasing the percentage values of success for that strategy. So like if we're looking at this window here, the short breakdown hold until the close, we're about 10 minutes before the close, that strategy is winning 62% of the time. So over the past 64 trading days, it's spitting out about 307 trades, which, over a 64-day trading period, right about five trades a day on average. Now, some days it might not trade. Some days it might trade, when the conditions are right, it will trade. If the conditions are not right, you might have a day where there's no trades. But the bottom line is that optimization is a very time-consuming process. And whenever we optimize something, it might work for a day, 2 days, a week, a month. You never know how long something that you have is going to, if it's working, you never really know how long it's going to continue to work. Typically, the only thing you can be assured of is that at some point it will stop working. So then when that happens, we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to re-optimize, which is very time-consuming. So the AI channel is using our backtesting technology, but using even more of the AI technology that we've configured on the back end of things that will, in essence, re-optimize our strategies every 24-hour period. Therefore alleviating you, me and everybody else from additional hours and hours and hours of data crunching. So, long story short, we're using the AI technology to make my life, your life, everybody else's life a little bit easier and generating these highly statistical, highly probabilistic events that all we have to do is sit here and wait for the symbol to come out and know, hey, I've got a 62% chance of winning from anything that comes out of this one, 60% chance of winning anything that comes out of here. So
Yeah, and then Steve was asking if there's a version of the AI channel available as a beta for oddsmaker owners. I was just letting him know, not quite yet, but when we do release the first iteration, it will be released as a beta, as a public beta to oddsmaker owners that are subscribers.
Right on,
Could
right
you
on.
very quickly show what the oddsmaker is for a new user?
Oh yeah,
Dave,
sure.
I don't think he's seen it demonstrated before.
Not a problem. Let's just see here. So here's a strategy. Let's see here what we've got to do in here. Now this is a long strategy. I'm just going to go ahead and run the numbers here. So this strategy, while those numbers are calculating, the alert that we're using is simply a 30-minute opening range breakout with a very specific filter string here. Obviously, there's been some optimizing going on here. So if we take a look at the results that just came back, and let's look at the backtest time period. Okay, so when we backtest a strategy, we can backtest anywhere from 1 to 64 days on the calendar, or excuse me, 64 trading days, so that's a little over 3 months on the calendar. So what we have here are the instructions for backtesting this window here. Now, just to cover real quickly, the historical functionality that we can access in the alert window, we're seeing the history now. Once again, this history goes back for 64 trading days. So the odds maker works in conjunction with that history and allows us to simply attach a rule set to that history. So in this case, I'm saying, okay, I don't want to backtest the opening 15 minutes. I want to sit out the first 15 minutes. And then from 6:45 a.m. to 10 a.m., I'm going to take, the first occurrence of each symbol here will be folded into the backtest results. Then we've got it set up for an intraday hold time of simply 30 minutes. And we're using a stop loss across the board of just a flat buck. Now, we do have options for the intraday hold times. We can say add a specific time or after so many minutes, and then for you swing traders out there, we can say what happens if I hold until so many days and get me out at the open, or hold for so many days and get me out at the close. So right here we're seeing over the past 64 trading days, this strategy spit out 347 trades, of which 70.9% are winners. It's going to go on to tell you what your average winner is here versus your average loser. So we have a 12-cent spread between average winner and loser. Strategy return, this is an estimated monthly return, and this would be annual. And then these fields down here, not the only thing that make us unique, but are a big factor in what separates our backtester from a lot of the other ones out there. Number one, we're event-based. So this, looking back at this filter complement and this alert, no matter how complex or simple this is, we can always just call this an event. So we're telling the system, anytime this event presents itself in any of these markets, show me the symbol that is exhibiting that event. That's the first big difference, because most other backtesters, you have to create a strategy, and then you have to individually cram different stocks in there and see how they would have done. Whereas we're creating the event. And then, more importantly, we give our users the ability to customize their strategy based on their trading account characteristics, like how much equity do you have? What do you trade? Do you trade 100 shares per trade, or do you prefer to do $10,000 a trade and just get as many shares as you can for that specific stock? We also allow you to factor in your commission rate and slippage. And that's very, very important, because most software packages out there that have a back tester will show you this black equity curve, which is gross. Of course, I don't know many people out there that trade commission free and they get the exact prices as their back tester does. So the fact that we allow you to build in slippage and your commission rate to generate this equity curve is huge, because this is the only equity curve that matters. And obviously we want as as small of a gap here as we can get. So, inclusive of commissions and slippage here. Now, starting equity, you might be wondering, why is this red? Well, if we look at this buying power right here, this is simply the amount of buying power you would have needed on the busiest day that the strategy had, which was this spike right here. And if we hover our mouse along these lines here on the calendar, it'll isolate that part of the day. So there we go over here. On the 28th, if you wanted to be in every trade, which on the 28th there were, this thing spit out 53 trades and won 45 of them. So what that number is telling you is if you wanted to be in all those trades that day at $10,000 a pop, you would have needed right about $500,000 in buying power. Now, the reason this is red is because this works on a 4-to-1 ratio. So we only need a quarter of that, which would be probably a little bit less. Now notice when I go below the threshold, it turns red. So I would need right at 123,000 in equity if I wanted to be in every trade. Now, of course, that might be a little rich for some people, so we can always curtail it down and say, okay, if we only wanted to do $5,000 a trade, obviously it's going to cut the buying power required in half, and then we don't need as much equity. So the fact that we can build in our commission and our slippage and then get a more realistic equity curve is pretty big, because not only does it take into account on the entry, but this is using 5 cents on the entry and 5 cents on the exit, just like it's using $1.25 on the buy and $1.25 on the sell for the round turn. So, obviously we could keep going with the odds maker, but I hope that that's a high enough overview to give you an idea of what we can do with the odds maker and the types of data sets that we can generate. If we look at the daily, daily occurrences of winners and losers over the past 64 trading days, here we can see a nice bar graph of, hey, if it was a winning day, it's green, it's on top. If it was a losing day, it's red, it's on the bottom. So once again, some very, catchy metrics here to just help you, sort through all the data and get these data sets in the condition that we need them to be in. And then, of course, these are always some of my favorite metrics down here. These are real confidence boosters. In the past 64 trading days, most winning days in a row, 7. Most losing day in a row, 5. Your biggest winning day, using this amount per trade, was $3,000. Biggest losing day was $345. So, when we see numbers like that, that's what we want to see. It's it takes a lot of the pressure off. The simpler that we can make our decision-making process, the happier we are, as humans. So, I hope that was enough. It's just barely scratching the surface of the odds maker, but that gives you an idea of what it can do. And by the way, when we did run that scan, we backtested 347 trades in a matter of seconds. When you're just starting off trying to find these strategies, you might generate data sets that have 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 trades in there. And what I'll say about that is that if you don't have a tool like the odds maker, you just simply cannot do that type of heavy lifting. So the odds maker is a very powerful tool that allows us to learn at a rate which is exponential compared to not having a tool like this. Okay, what do we have next there, Mr. Scott?
Well, if we have any more questions, hey, do you happen to have those the compare account windows for all the sectors? Do you have that as like a cloud link you can share out?
I do have that as a layout that I can send out to people. Yes.
Okay, so anyone that wants that, Carl, for example, and email jhodge@tradeIdeas.com or info@tradeIdeas.com, and we'll take care of you. If there's no other questions, I just want to thank everyone for joining us again today. If you have any questions at all, email info@trade-ideas.com. Go ahead and download that handout that's attached to today's conference for that product code that can save you 25% off the odds maker. And also has that link, the bit.ly/save900 link that takes you to the package to go ahead and get the full year of trade ideas, the odds maker license, the optimized strategy, etc. for just $10.88. Again, just thanks everyone for joining us. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Come to our next webinar, and keep an eye out on your email for the next invite. We'll be having a couple webinars on Wednesday too.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. Good luck with your trading tomorrow, and we hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thanks everyone.